You know those families where success isn't just expected, it's engineered? That was the Mitchell family. Riley Mitchell grew up in a pristine colonial house in the heart of Boston's Upper Crust, a home where weekend conversations revolved around grant proposals, Nobel laureates, and SAT scores. Not emotions, not dreams, only results. Her father, Dr. William Mitchell, was the respected dean of economics at a prestigious university. Her mother, Dr. Margaret Mitchell, was a renowned biochemist who'd once graced the cover of a national science journal. They didn't just value intelligence, they worshipped it. And then there was Ethan Riley's older brother, the golden boy. He had perfect test scores, captain of the debate team, Yale-bound before he even turned 17. To the Mitchells, Ethan wasn't just a son, he was proof their formula worked. So when Riley showed even the slightest sign of being average, a B+ on a test, a missed science award, her parents didn't just take note, they took offense. She was raised under the silent weight of not enough, not smart enough, not polished enough, not Ethan. In this house, love came in the form of expectations and disappointment that came in silence or worse, forced smiles at the dinner table. To survive, Riley learned early how to hide her own voice because in the Mitchell dynasty, success had one look, and she didn't fit it. It was buried deep in the back of a drawer in her grandfather's study, a small metal case, dusty, forgotten, untouched for decades. Riley wasn't supposed to be snooping around that day, but 13-year-olds are naturally curious, and grief has a strange way of making you reach for what's left behind. Her grandfather had passed away 2 weeks earlier. The family only ever spoke of him as a respected hospital administrator. They praised his later career in suits and sterile halls, not the mud, blood, and chaos of war. But when Riley opened the case, her breath caught. Inside was a faded bronze medal with a red cross. Below it, a weathered photo of a young man, her grandfather kneeling beside a wounded soldier in World War II. The words engraved on the medal were simple, "For valor under fire." That was the moment everything shifted. Not because it was shiny, not because it was heroic, but because it felt honest. That photo didn't show a man behind a desk. It showed a man on the ground saving lives under fire. That day, Riley didn't say a word to anyone, but in her heart, a spark ignited. She didn't want to wear a lab coat. She wanted to wear that badge, not to impress her family, but to honor the only Mitchell who had ever made her feel seen, her grandfather. She had practiced the words for days. Over and over in front of the mirror, Riley rehearsed the line, "I've decided to enlist in the army." She imagined shock, maybe concern. What she didn't expect, what she wasn't ready for, was the storm that followed. It was a Sunday dinner. The Mitchell dining room was its usual picture of perfection. Polished silver, crystal glasses, cold silence between bites. And then Riley said it. "I'm joining the army. I've already spoken to the recruiter. I leave in 2 weeks." The room went still. Her mother dropped her fork. Her father stiffened like someone had insulted the family name. Ethan, he laughed, a real belly-deep laugh that echoed off the marble walls. "Playing soldier now, are we?" he smirked. "You do realize this isn't some action movie, right? You're not going to be saving lives. You'll be pushing papers in some office if you're lucky." Her mother buried her face in her hands, tears already falling. "Where did we go wrong with you, Riley? We gave you everything. Why would you throw it away like this?" And then came the final blow, her father's voice, flat, cold, laced with contempt. "The military is for people who don't have any other options. Is that who you are now?" Riley sat there frozen. She wanted to scream, to defend herself, to say Grandpa would have understood. But the words wouldn't come. Just the sound of cutlery scraping plates. Just the feeling of her chair shrinking beneath her. just the sharp taste of shame burning the back of her throat. That night in her childhood bedroom, she stared at two pieces of paper, an acceptance letter to a state university and Army enlistment papers. By morning, she knew. Her family didn't believe in her, but she was about to believe in herself. The moment the bus doors hissed open at Fort Jackson, Riley knew this wasn't Boston anymore. There were no marble floors here. No pressed suits, no polite silence, just mud, yelling, and the suffocating weight of expectation from no one but herself. Within minutes, a drill sergeant barked her last name like it was an insult. "Mitchell, move like you've got a reason to exist." And for the first time in her life, Riley didn't feel small under that pressure. She felt free. Because no one here cared about SAT scores. No one asked what school she went to or who her parents were. They didn't care that she wasn't Ethan. Here, all that mattered was, can you keep going when every part of you wants to quit? Can you carry your teammate when your legs are burning? Can you think clearly when the world around you is falling apart? Riley did more push-ups in one morning than she had in her entire life. She learned how to make a bed with hospital corners, march in formation, and speak only when spoken to. She learned that sleep was a luxury and hesitation could get someone killed. But most importantly, she learned that she was capable of more than anyone, especially her family, had ever imagined. There were nights she wanted to quit, but each morning she laced up her boots tighter, not because she had something to prove to them, but because for once she had something to prove to herself. Week 3 hit hard. The screaming never stopped. The blisters turned to open wounds. The mental games were relentless. They made her run with full gear in pouring rain, crawl under barbed wire through mud that stank like death, and hold a plank position until her arms gave out. But Riley didn't crack. In fact, the more they pushed, the more she leaned in. There was something primal about it all. No pretenses, no grades, just grit. And grit she had. During a live fire drill, one recruit panicked and froze behind cover. Without hesitation, Riley darted across the course, grabbed his vest, and barked, "You move or we both fail. Your choice." They made it through together. She didn't get a medal, no applause, just a nod from her drill sergeant. But it meant more than any trophy on her parents' display shelf. Later that night, during a rare quiet moment, her instructor looked her square in the eye and said, "Mitchell, you've got fire and focus. You were built for this." Those words lodged deep in her chest, not because they were loud, but because they were true. For the first time in her life, someone saw her, not as a disappointment, not as a shadow, but as a force. She didn't need to be Ethan. She didn't need to fit their mold. She was building her own. She thought the uniform would change something. She had earned it, every stitch of it. The boots, the ribbons, the name tape over her heart. It wasn't just fabric, it was proof. Proof she had survived. Proof she belonged. Proof she wasn't the failure they had once called her. But when she stepped through the front door that December, suitcase in one hand and duffel over her shoulder, her mother's first words were, "You're tracking mud on the rug." Her father barely looked up from his laptop. Ethan gave her a once-over, then smirked. "Cute costume," he muttered. "How's boot camp, Barbie?" No one asked about her graduation. No one asked about her rank. No one cared that she had finished top 10% of her class. At dinner, she tried to bring it up. "I got recognized for my performance in medical drills," she said, her voice hopeful. Her mother interrupted, reaching for the wine. "That's nice, dear. Did you know Ethan might make junior partner?" The room clinked with glasses, but not a single toast was raised for her. Later that night, standing in front of the mirror in her childhood bedroom, still covered in anatomy posters and Ivy League banners, Riley stared at herself in uniform. She had changed. She had grown. But they hadn't. And in that cold, quiet moment, one truth echoed in her chest. They'll never see me. I have to save myself. The orders came on a Thursday morning, a manila envelope. No drama, no ceremony, just a single line. Deployment, Afghanistan, 10th Mountain Division. Her heart thudded once, then steadied. This was what she trained for. That night, she called home. Her mother answered on the second ring. "Hi, Mom, I just got my deployment orders. I'm being sent to Afghanistan." Silence. Then, "Oh, I guess that was inevitable with the path you chose." Riley swallowed hard. "I thought you'd want to know." "I'm not sure what you expect me to say," her mother replied. "Just keep your head down, okay?" Her father's voice came faintly in the background. "Tell her not to do anything heroic." Heroic? That word hung in the air like smoke. She wasn't expecting a parade, but a "be safe," a "we love you," a "we're proud," nothing. Just cold advice from people who had never once asked what her days were like in uniform. She ended the call quietly. No goodbye, just the soft click of distance deepening. In her barracks that night, surrounded by packed gear and quiet tension, Riley stared at the wall. Tomorrow, she'd fly into a war zone. But somehow, what hurt more was already behind her. Afghanistan wasn't what she expected. It wasn't just bullets and dust. It was boredom between chaos. It was laughter intense and whispered stories under stars. It was survival, and sometimes it was family. At first, some of the infantry guys didn't take her seriously. She was the new medic, fresh out of training, still too clean, too calm. But then the first mission happened, and they watched her stabilize a bleeding soldier under fire with nothing but a tourniquet gauze and sheer nerve. From that day forward, they trusted her. They taught her how to fix a Humvee radiator with duct tape. She taught them how to improvise a chest seal with an MRE wrapper. They shared MREs and smuggled instant coffee. They teased each other mercilessly, but stood shoulder to shoulder when things got real. On her birthday, they gave her a makeshift cake made out of protein bars and peanut butter. One guy carved Sarge R into a piece of wood with his bayonet and handed it to her like it was gold. That night, as she sat on sandbags eating a candleless cake in the freezing dark, someone leaned over and said, "We got your six, Riley. Always." She blinked away tears she didn't even know were coming, because for the first time in her life, someone meant it. 1 minute, their convoy was rumbling down a dusty road outside Kandahar. The next, fire and metal split the sky. An IED. The lead MR-APE launched into the air and slammed down like a toy crushed in a child's hand. The explosion shook the earth. The radio crackled with screams. Riley's training kicked in before fear could. She grabbed her trauma bag, shoved open the Humvee door, and ran straight into the smoke. Gunfire echoed in the distance. The heat clawed at her face. Blood pooled on the ground beneath twisted metal. Inside the mangled vehicle, 2 soldiers were trapped. One was screaming. The other wasn't. She crawled in anyway. The air was thick with diesel, sand, and the copper sting of blood. Riley reached the first soldier, Staff Sergeant Cooper. Femoral bleed. She had seconds to act. She tore open a tourniquet with her teeth, wrapped it tight, and applied direct pressure with both hands. Her gloves turned red instantly. "Stay with me, Cooper." "You hear me. I've got you." He nodded weakly. Outside, someone shouted her name. "Mitchell! Incoming fire!" She didn't move. The second soldier had a collapsed lung. She did an emergency needle decompression in a burning vehicle, on her knees, heart racing. The medevac took 14 minutes to arrive. For all 14, she kept them breathing, switching tourniquets, replacing bandages, reassuring, bleeding. When it was over, her uniform was soaked through. Her hands trembled as she watched the helicopter lift off. Then a voice behind her, "Mitchell, what you did today, you saved 2 lives under fire." She turned. It was Captain Williams. And for the first time, Riley felt something her family never gave her. Respect, earned the hard way. There are missions they don't list in after-action reports. No headlines, no medals, just silence. They called it Operation Silent Retrieval, a top-secret rescue mission to extract 3 American hostages from a Taliban compound buried deep in the mountains. 12 soldiers, 1 medic, Riley. The intel was clear: limited time, high risk, no margin for error. They inserted at night, 2 Blackhawks slicing through moonless sky. Riley sat in the rear, double-checking her trauma kit by feel, alone. She had packed every inch with supplies: tourniquets, IV kits, chest seals, morphine, adrenaline, hope. 20 minutes from target, it happened. The first chopper took a hit. The alarm screamed. Hydraulics failed. The pilot cursed. The world tilted sideways. Riley was slammed against the cabin wall as metal screeched and the helicopter spiraled down into a valley crawling with hostiles. The crash hit like thunder. Smoke filled the air. Someone screamed. A soldier next to her wasn't moving. Riley's ears rang, her vision blurred, but instinct took over. She checked for pulses, tied field dressings, dragged the unconscious by their flak vests. Gunfire cracked above them. She was now in the middle of a war zone, injured, surrounded, and responsible for everyone bleeding around her. And the mission hadn't even started yet. The air was chaos. Bullets screamed. Dirt flew. Smoke curled around them like a curse. Riley dropped to her knees next to Sergeant Rivera, who had taken a round to the thigh. Blood pulsed, bright, hot, dangerous. She didn't flinch. She slapped on gloves, ripped open her trauma kit, and pulled out a tourniquet. Wrapped it tight. 1, twist. 2. Screams in the background. A mortar blast nearby. She didn't look up. "Rivera, talk to me," she barked. He gritted his teeth, nodded once. He was still with her. Then came the next scream. Master Sergeant Phillips, chest wound. Collapsed lung. There was no shelter, no time, only hand skill and whatever she could grab. She bit down on her pen light, clamped it between her teeth, and performed an emergency needle decompression the way she'd only practiced in sterile training rooms, except now she was kneeling in blood, under fire, hearing her own name shouted over comms. "Mitchell, Mitchell, we need you, left flank." She turned and fire sliced across her left thigh. Pain exploded down her leg. She fell hard, breath knocked from her lungs. Blood soaked through the fabric immediately, but she didn't stop. Biting through the pain, Riley pulled herself behind a broken rock wall, ripped her pant leg, and wrapped a field dressing around her own leg. She cinched it with her belt, tight enough to cry out, but not enough to cry. Then she stood back up, because someone else was calling her name, and there was still life left to save. They were surrounded. 12 soldiers. 5 wounded, no medevac, no backup, and now enemy fighters were flanking both sides. Captain Davis's voice crackled over the comms. "We need coordinates, now. Mitchell, you've got the only visual." Her heart skipped. Then she moved. Low, fast, crawling across open ground, dragging her body over gravel and dirt. Her wounded leg throbbed with every inch. Bullets kicked up sand inches from her head. One grazed her helmet, sending a chunk of Kevlar flying. She didn't stop. Eyes locked on a ridge where enemy mortar crews were dug in. She raised the radio, voice tight, precise. "Grid 117 Alpha, confirmed enemy stronghold, request immediate airstrike." She barely finished the call before a round slammed into the rock beside her, but then the sky roared. 2 jets thundered overhead and hell rained down on enemy lines. The blast lit up the valley like sunrise. Gunfire slowed, then stopped. Silence. Real, fragile silence. But the price had already been paid. She turned and saw Bennett, her closest friend in the unit, slumped against the dirt, shrapnel in his chest, blood everywhere. She ran, dropped to her knees, hands trembling, pressure applied, CPR started. "Come on, Bennett, stay with me, please." His eyes fluttered, then stillness. She screamed, not from pain, not from fear, but from the kind of heartbreak only a combat medic knows when your best isn't enough. 3 days after the mission, Riley was stabilized. Stitches in her leg, cracked rib, bruises that made breathing hurt, but nothing stung more than silence. She stared at her phone. 1 bar, satellite signal, enough to make a call. Her fingers shook. She dialed. The line rang once, twice, then, hello? Her father's voice, calm, measured, distant. Dad, it's me, Riley. I made it. Pause. I got hurt, but I'm okay now. I just needed to hear a familiar voice. Another pause. Then came the response, will this affect your military contract? The words hit harder than any shrapnel. Before she could answer, her mother's voice broke in on speakerphone as always. Riley, sweetheart, when are you flying home for Ethan's engagement party? Riley's jaw clenched. No, how are you? No, are you safe? No, we're proud of you. Just logistics. Just Ethan. She looked down at her blood-stained bandage, at the fading bruise on her palm, and then she said it. I won't be there. A pause. Then her father again. Well, I hope you're not trying to make this about you. Her hands trembled. She hung up. The connection ended with a beep, and Riley realized she had just survived hell, but home was the only place she was still invisible. The dress uniform was crisp, her Purple Heart pinned perfectly on her chest, hair neatly tied back, posture straight. Riley walked into the Mitchell family home, her boots polished to a shine. Inside, laughter spilled from the living room. Champagne, string lights, fancy hors d'oeuvres. It was Ethan's engagement party. Dozens of guests, Ivy League friends, parents beaming with pride. Then the room noticed her. The silence was instant. Not respect, not awe, just awkward. Her mother was the first to speak. Oh, Riley, you wore your costume. Riley blinked. My uniform, Mom. Her father gave a dry chuckle. And what's that little pin? He squinted at her chest. The one you get for tripping during training. Her stomach twisted. That's the Purple Heart, she replied quietly, for being wounded in combat. The room stayed silent. Ethan shrugged, lifting a glass. Well, hey, congrats on surviving basic clumsiness. Laughter, scattered, forced, but loud enough to cut. Riley stood still, her jaw locked, her throat burned. But she smiled, not because it was funny, because she refused to let them see her break. They could mock the medal, mock the uniform, mock the pain she carried, but they hadn't earned the right to speak of war. And she didn't need their welcome. She had already come home a warrior. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. Riley had stayed silent for years, swallowing every insult, dodging every question, letting them believe she was just playing soldier. But tonight, something cracked. She stood by the dessert table, still in her uniform, ignored like a shadow. Then someone asked, so did you ever actually see combat? She turned, and she told them about the 48 hours in a valley surrounded by insurgents, about performing field surgery with a penlight in her teeth, about calling in airstrikes while bleeding from the thigh, about Bennett dying in her arms. The room went still. Her father took a slow sip of wine, then said, Riley, we expected more of you. Not a war story, not a uniform, not a game. That was it. The snap. Riley dropped her glass. I bled for this country. I watched men scream for their mothers. I pulled shrapnel from someone's spine with my bare hands. And you still think this is a fucking game? Gasps. Silence. Then footsteps. Her own. She walked out. No jacket, no keys, just pain. Later that night, curled up in a hotel room, her chest tight and face wet, her phone buzzed. Staff Sergeant Torres. She didn't answer, but he called again. Then again. Finally, she picked up. Riley. She couldn't speak. He didn't need her to. I'm outside. You saved us out there. Now let me show up for you. 3 weeks passed. The bruises faded, but the silence from her family didn't. Then, one Monday morning, the call came. Sergeant Riley Mitchell, this is Major Griffin, Pentagon Liaison Office. You've been requested in D.C. by name. Riley sat upright. Why? A pause. Then the major said quietly, You're being awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. Riley couldn't speak. That's the second highest military honor, the voice continued. The White House wants the president to present it himself. She looked around her barracks, boots, duffel, bunk bed, and for a moment, she didn't feel small anymore. 2 days later, Washington. Riley stood in front of 4-star generals, Secret Service, and Pentagon brass. She wore her best dress blues. Her Purple Heart gleamed. But it was the scar on her thigh that grounded her in reality. A female colonel smiled gently. The president has read every word of your report, Sergeant Mitchell. He said one sentence stood out. Riley swallowed. He said, Anyone who crawled through live fire to save lives deserves to stand beside me. The East Room of the White House was glowing in soft gold light. Journalists, generals, senators, medal recipients, and the Mitchell family seated in the 4th row. Riley walked down the aisle flanked by honor guards. She didn't search the crowd for her parents. She didn't need their eyes, not anymore. The room stood when the president entered. He took the podium. Then he began to read. 48 hours, 1 medic, 27 hostages, 15 lives saved. A rescue that turned the tide in a region the world had forgotten. Then he paused, looked at Riley. She didn't just save soldiers. She saved children, civilians. She saved America. Murmurs in the crowd, flashbulbs. But behind Riley, her family sat frozen. Her mother clutched her purse like a shield. Her father looked away, jaw tight. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Then the president stepped toward her. He placed the Distinguished Service Cross on her chest. And as he leaned in for the ceremonial handshake, he whispered, My brother was one of the hostages. My family owes you everything. Riley didn't cry, but she felt something warm break open inside her. Not validation, release. The ceremony was over. Reporters swarmed. Cameras clicked. Everyone wanted to hear from America's combat angel. Riley stood composed, answering questions with clarity and grace. But out of the corner of her eye, she saw them, her parents, Ethan. Standing by the marble column, no longer towering, now they looked small. Her father approached first, voice stiff, unfamiliar. We didn't know. We're proud of you, Riley. Then her mother, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. We should have asked. We should have believed. Riley paused. She looked at them, people who had dismissed her dreams, mocked her courage, ignored her pain. And she said quietly, You never asked, until now. Silence. She turned back to the cameras. The crowd, the soldiers who waited to embrace her. Behind her, her family stood still, surrounded by applause, but no longer part of it. They transferred her to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. No sand, no gunfire. Just white walls, clean halls, and the steady rhythm of recovery. But Riley didn't miss the battlefield. Now she had a new mission. She trained the next generation of combat medics, teaching them not just how to stop bleeding, but how to stay calm when the world fell apart. She taught from scars, not textbooks, and they listened. One afternoon after class, a young recruit approached, barely 19, nervous, shaking hands. Sergeant Mitchell, I just wanted to say, I enlisted because of you. I saw the ceremony, I saw you, and I knew if someone like you could do it, then maybe I could too. Riley's throat tightened. She smiled. Then let's make sure you're ready, because out there, someone will need you to be. It began with a letter, a plain envelope, no return address, just one line on the flap, Dad. Inside, folded neatly, were 6 words. Can I come see what you do? Riley froze. She had waited her whole life to hear that question. Not, why did you join? Not, why didn't you go to law school? Not, how could you throw your future away? But, can I come see? The next week, he arrived at Walter Reed. No lectures, just quiet eyes and a notebook in hand. He watched her teach, watched her help a double amputee learn to walk again. And at the end of the day, he stood by the hospital window and said softly, "You didn't choose the easy path, Riley. You chose the right one. And I see that now." Over the months, the change grew. Her mother started sending handwritten cards and cookies. Her brother began volunteering at a veterans legal clinic. They still weren't perfect, but they were present, and that was more than Riley ever thought she'd get. Now, every time she puts on her uniform, she no longer feels like the invisible Mitchell. She feels whole. And when recruits ask how she found the strength, she simply says, "The medals don't make the medic. It's the lives you save, even when no one is watching." The Mitchell home had changed, not in its bricks or paint, but in spirit. Her father now called every month. Her mother sent recipes and prayers. Ethan, he started introducing her as my sister, a real American hero. But Riley, she didn't cling to any of it. She was grateful, but not dependent, because she had already rebuilt herself. When reporters asked how it felt to finally be accepted, she just smiled. "I didn't fight for their approval. I fought because people needed saving." On her last day before deployment as an instructor, a rookie asked her, "Sarge, what really makes a great medic?" Riley looked down at the worn tag on her boot, thought of blood-soaked desert sand, thought of the silence after explosions, thought of every heartbeat she'd helped continue. Then she answered, "The medals don't make the medic. It's the lives you save, even when no one is watching." And with that, Riley Mitchell picked up her kit and walked forward into a future she'd already earned. Sometimes the people who should see your worth never do, not until it's too late. But that doesn't mean you stop being who you are. Riley's story reminds us that self-worth is not something others give you. It's something you build, battle after battle, scar after scar, choice after choice. True courage is standing firm in your path, even when no one claps, no one believes, and no one comes looking. Because the world will eventually see, but by then, you won't need them to. If Riley's story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own silent battles, don't scroll away. Click subscribe and join us as we uncover stories the world tries to ignore. Real strength, real sacrifice, real people. This is where unsung heroes finally get heard.